All right, so now I'm going to show you how to actually copy files because, of course, when you're building applications, you want to actually be able to put them into your Docker image, right? So that is eventually what we are all going for. Most of us aren't just installing dependencies. We are actually creating our own applications and putting them there. So it's not too bad. It's pretty much like copying files around just in your regular file system on your host machine, in a terminal, in a file browser, whatever you're used to. There are a few little things to just get used to. So one thing is to know your current working directory, or if you don't know it, like just cheat and just set it. You know, you can always set your working directory as whatever you want for it to be. Quite often what I do is I just add my user, I'll go to my user, and then I'll go to that home directory as a working directory. I will make a directory that is for my project. So this particular project is a Flask application. So I just, said make dir Flask app, then set that one as my working directory. And then once we're there, I'm just gonna copy all the files from my build context, and I'm gonna go over this in a second, to my current working directory. So what we have here is that we have this project directory, and within that I have a project, and then I could have one or more applications. This project only has one application, but just to demonstrate how that could work, like maybe you have server-side code and client-side code, or maybe you have like different models that you're deploying. You could have all kinds of different things, but for right now, we just have one Flask application. In there, I have my Dockerfile. So generally, I have one application or one model corresponds to one Docker image, and each one of those is in its own directory. So I really like it when I look at a project and I can just run tree or just look at the directory structure, and I can pretty much figure out what's going on. I've always found that to be something that's really good and really helpful, and so I always try to do things that way too. So you can see here's the Flask app, and then this contains all the code necessary for running this Flask application. So you can actually see I have my environment.yaml here. Now, in this particular instance, I have it within this project because it's the environment for this project, and that way I can have multiple environments for multiple projects or multiple applications or models or whatever I happen to be working on that day. And this is how I like to keep things organized. So then things are a little bit different, because when I actually go, when I actually go to build my Docker image, what I'm saying now is Docker build, giving it a tag. And normally what we saw before was this was just dot, and the dot was saying, okay, my build context is in my current working directory. And as a cheat, what you want for that to be is you want for that directory to be the directory that contains your Docker file. That's your build context. And from there, everything is relative. Everything is relative to the build context. So for instance, when I'm here and I'm copying files, even though I'm building from this directory here, I'm building from the build Flask app Docker directory, right? I'm doing a copy. And it's copying this directory. Okay, it's not copying anything else. It's copying this directory. It's not copying all the rest of this stuff. Okay, because it's always relative to my build context, which is right here. So that's just always the way that I have things set up. As long as you stick to that particular structure, I mean, it can get a little bit tricky in your head, where is this file? Is it in the build context? Is it relative to the build context? Just do everything relative to your build context. Act like that is an absolute directory. That's where you're sitting. And that's always just the easiest way to do things. So since we have that, oh, now I have to put this as something else. Okay. And I'm actually just going to run bash because I just want to show you that. Oh. And then I need to have this -it so that I can get a shell. Okay, so now that I've run this, I've run docker run -p -it to actually give me a shell because I want to have some interactive commands. So now that I'm there, I can say, okay, where am I? I'm in home Flask app, which is, by the way, where I set that as my current working directory. I don't know why this keeps doing this. Okay, so I set this as my current working directory up here. And you can see that it's still my current working directory once I'm in the container, like that always persists. And then if I just run an ls, then you can see that everything in this directory here, like inside of this directory, not the directory itself, because this is our build context, actually got copied over to this directory, which was our current working directory. So you can see it's right here, copy copy the current build context to my current working directory in my container. And I mean, that's it. That's how that works. If I had wanted to, I could have done like run make dir flask app dir or something, and then done flask app dir. It's pretty much just like, it's just like copying and creating files how you would normally do it, especially if you're already used to a terminal. The same things apply. You can't like copy files to directories that don't exist. You have to make the directory first. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You still have to have permissions to copy places. So now that I'm actually running as the Flask user, which I set up here. Oh, I killed it. So now that I'm actually running as the Flask user, I couldn't write to places where my Flask user doesn't have permission to write. So if I tried to write to /root or something, it would say no permission denied, because it is basically just a regular Linux computer. And once you understand those things, it gets so much easier. I tend to just so that it's very, very explicit, like as best practices, I just always explicitly set the working directory whenever I'm copying files over. I just find that makes it so much easier. And then, if I leave for a little while and come back, I just know, okay, this is my working directory. This is where I'm starting from. This is where my project is, this is where everything goes. And I just find that to be personally a really nice way to work. I mean, you can't always just know just what your working directory is, and that's fine too. So, yep. So again, we are copying here from the build context inside here. We're copying it to our current working directory in our application, and it comes up right here. So that's all for that lesson. Now you can see how you copy files over from your host machine to your Docker image during build time. And in the next lesson, I'm going to go over some project organization, housekeeping, best practices, and you're going to hear more about why I do this, why I think that it's helpful, and some other helpful tips and tricks. So that's it for this lesson. Thanks.